Hi, and welcome to our first lesson. When we work on an After Effects project, we need to work very organized to prevent issues in the future. The best way to work on an animation project is to create organized folders on our computer. So, find a good spot on your computer where you want to create the main folder for the course. Great, and now, after finding a good spot, create a new folder. We'll name this folder DIM_logo animation. If you're using Windows, you can right-click on the folder and select Pin to Quick Access. This will make it easier to access this folder in the future. Now, let's enter the folder we just created and create 4 more subfolders. The first one is AE, where we will save all our After Effects files. The second one is Renders or Samples. In this folder, we will keep all the renders and project tests. Now, we need to create 2 more folders. One is named Assets, where we will store all the graphic assets related to this project. The second one is AI, where we will keep all the Adobe Illustrator files. In our case, these are the logo designs for this project. And since I already prepared the folders for this course, instead of creating these folders, let's go into the main folder of the course that you downloaded from me. Open it, and copy these 2 folders from there. Now, paste them into the folder we just created. Now, let's install the fonts we will use in this course. For this, open the Assets folder. Don't worry if you see more files here than in the lesson recording right now. I'll add those later. For now, just open the Fonts folder. I'll show you how to install fonts for both Windows and Mac users. Let's start with this font called Montserrat. Open the folder and go into the Static folder. For Windows users, select all the files, right-click. Click on Show More Options if you don't see all the actions, and choose Install for all users or Install. This font is already installed on my computer, so I won't install it again. For Mac users with Finder selected, click on Go. Now click on Go to Folder and type this line. Then press Enter. This will bring you to the Fonts folder installed on your system. Now copy all the fonts from the course folder to the System Fonts folder. Okay, and now, let's go back to the Fonts folder and install another font called Ezra. Once you're in the folder, enter the OTF folder and select all the files. Right-click and choose Install for all users or Install. The last font we'll use in this course is called Belly, and it's only available on Adobe's Fonts website. So, let's go there and install it. Find the link to the font in the description of this video. If you don't have a subscription to Adobe Fonts, it's totally fine. I will tell you what font to use instead later in this course. So don't worry, you don't have to install this font right now. And for those that have an Adobe subscription, first, make sure you sign in. Then, just click on Add Family. And hit OK. Alright, so after installing all the fonts, let's head back to the main folder and open the AI folder. This is where we'll find all our logo designs and Illustrator files. Let's start with the first logo. So let's open it up to see how it is made in Illustrator. And now, to make it easier for everyone to see the same panel arrangement, go to Windows, then Workspace, and select Automation. Awesome! So, this is a logo I designed specifically for the course. Let's imagine that this logo is intended for a women's sportswear company. As you can see, this logo consists of multiple layers. We have this triangle, a background layer, a capital letter A, and the letters of the logo name, each separated into its own layer, which will be very helpful for us in the animation part. Every time you design a logo, it's better to try to build it in this way with all the letters separated. Alright, once we have seen the logo design, it's very important to plan the animation we wish to create. To do this, we can sketch out a quick development plan for the animation. That is, create a short storyboard. In order to see how the storyboard should look, let's navigate to the Assets folder and enter the ideas for the logo animations folder. Now open the storyboard for this logo, and let's take a look at the sketch I made for this one. Making a sketch before animating a logo in After Effects is super important. It helps you to see and plan the overall design and movement of the logo animation. This way, you can decide the timing, movement, and overall design of the logo animation. It also helps your client to see the final result and make changes before you start animating. This can save you time and effort in the long run. In our case, I think adding the silhouette of Athena, from Greek mythology, would be a cool idea for our women's sportswear brand. She represents the values of empowering women and could symbolize what our brand is all about. Therefore, I want the warrior silhouette to be the first thing in the scene, followed by the brand name. Okay, I hope you understand the concept of how a storyboard should look. It doesn't have to be drawn at the highest level of detail. It's enough to present your idea in a sketch before moving on to the animation stage. Once you are satisfied with the planning, and the client has approved the sketch, it's time to start the animation stage. I hope you're ready, because this lesson is going to be awesome. So, let's close the storyboard and open After Effects together. The first screen you'll see is the Home window. Here, you can either open a recent After Effects project you've been working on or create a new one. But let me show you the most common way to start a new project. So let's close this window for now. And now, so that we all see the same panel's layout, let's click on Default here. Now, as in any editing program, we need to open a new file. To do this in After Effects, we need to create a new composition. So, let's click on New Composition and define the settings for our first composition. It's important to note that we can easily change all of these settings at any stage of the animation in the future. Alright, so the first thing we need to do is to give it a name. Let's call our first composition Logo Animation 1. Great! The next thing we need to do is to set the dimensions for our first composition. This is the dimensions of the width and height of the composition we create, which will be the size of the final video at the end. Different cases require different resolutions. As shown in the examples, a regular Instagram feed required posts to be 1080 pixels in width by 1080 pixels in height, but the new feed requires a height of 1350 pixels. For stories, reels, and TikTok videos, the size should be 1080 pixels in width and 1920 pixels in height. For YouTube videos, it's best to use a resolution of 1080 pixels in height and 1920 pixels in width, which is a full HD format. If you want to make a 4K video, you'll need to use full HD resolution multiplied by 2. This time, we will work in full HD format, which is 1920 pixels in width and 1080 pixels in height. Next, we will choose the number of frames for our animation. What is the frame rate? In the world of video and animation, frame rate refers to the number of individual frames, or pictures, shown per second to create the illusion of motion. Frame rate is measured in frames per second, FPS. The higher the frame rate, the smoother the motion appears. Most common videos and films use a frame rate of 24, 25, or 30 frames per second. But if you want to create an animation for an app or a website, it's better to work on 60 frames per second. When you work with video editing software like After Effects, you have the flexibility to choose the frame rate for your project. It's important to note that the frame rate can affect the file size of the final file. Also, higher frame rates require more storage space and computing power, which can slow down your workflow. In our case, we'll set it to 30. Moving on. Here, we will choose the duration of our composition. The first numbers here are representing the amount of hours. The second one is the minutes. This one is for seconds. And last one is the solitary frames. 30 seconds will be enough this time. We can delete the last frame. Finally, let's choose the background color of the composition. Let's set it to be black. To wrap things up, let's click on OK here and here. Great job! You just created your first composition. And now, I want to talk about the interface of the program real quick and show you around the panels, so you can get a good idea of how this program works. It might seem like there are a lot of buttons and functions, but don't worry. I'll explain everything in a way that won't make your head spin. Okay, so first things first, these are the active panels in the software. Let's start talking about this area here, called the project panel. Into this panel, we will import all the assets that we will use in this project, such as pictures, sound files, videos, etc. Now let's move to the Layers panel, where we drag the assets from the Projects panel or create new layers such as basic shapes, text layers, effects, etc. And now, let's move to the panel next to the Layers panel called the Composition panel. This panel shows us our timeline, in which we navigate using the time indicator. Here, we have the ability to move layers and time to schedule between them. We will also see here the keyframes that we will create later for our layers, those keyframes that make our layers move. Everything we do in these two panels will be shown in the Preview panel. This is where we'll see how our layers will look to the viewer. These three panels all work together. Next, we have the Main Toolbar panel. The Main Toolbar panel in After Effects is a set of tools and functions used for creating, editing, and managing visual elements within your project. It includes tools for selecting, moving, transforming, drawing shapes, creating text, and more. Alright, and now, let's talk about the final panel, known as the Workflow area. This section contains various functions and panels to assist us in working on the project. We can access a window to view the list of effects, choose the font we want to use, and many other helpful utilities. Awesome! Now that you know your way around the panels, I want to make a few important notes and give you some important tips to keep in mind while working with After Effects. If you see the preview screen like this, don't worry. It's probably because your caps lock key is on. Just turn it off, and everything should be back to normal. Next, when you're working on a project in After Effects, make sure you switch your computer's language to English. This way, all the shortcuts we use will work properly. And if you don't see the background color, then simply click here. Now, if you see the numbers here differently from mine, make sure to zoom out the Timeline panel. Now, you can hover your mouse here, hold down the Control or a Command key, and click on the numbers here. These numbers represent the duration of our composition timeline. We can see it in frames or in seconds. Then, if you see the preview screen smaller or larger than mine, simply click here and select Fit. Finally, click here and change the preview quality here to full. Alright, so now, let's make some changes to the software preferences to make our workflow smoother. Just head over to Edit and go to Preferences. Mac users, you can access preferences this way. Alright, and now, let's click on General and start adjusting the software preferences. Now, set all the settings just like I did. You can pause the video if you need more time and continue when you're done. For now, I'm moving on to the next column, Grid and Guides. Change your settings to match mine. Alright, moving on to the Autosave section. In the Autosave section, we can choose how often the software should save our project automatically. Basically, this feature saves your work automatically at certain intervals, so you don't lose any progress if the program crashes or something crazy happens. I usually have it set to save every 5 minutes, but you can choose whatever time frame works for you. Next, in the Memory and Performance section, we can check how much RAM our computer has. It could be 16, 32, or even more than 61. If you want After Effects to run faster, you can give it more memory and use the rest for other stuff like surfing the web or running other programs. To make this happen, you must take some memory away from your computer. If you have 16 gigabytes, you can change this number to 6 or even 4. The main idea here is to lower the power you give to other applications, and by this, allow After Effects to use the rest of the power of your computer. Alright, moving on. Make sure that in Type, all the settings are like mine. And finally, let's go to Script and Expressions and select everything that's selected in my settings. It's important to note that you don't need to change these settings every time before starting a new project. Once we've set them once, there's no need to go back there again. Okay, So after we've created the first composition and defined the software settings, we need to save the project and give it a name. For this, let's go to File and click on Save. Now, let's find the folder we created earlier for the lesson. Head into the AE folder and name the After Effects file we are working on. It is important to understand that now, we are naming the After Effects file. Previously, we gave a name for our first composition, and not the name for this project. So now, we are giving a name for our project file. You can name it the same as the main composition and add an underscore, then write the name of the logo. In our case, it's Athena. Once done, save it, and our project will now have a name. And along with naming the project, we are also activated the autosave feature that we talked about earlier. This means that now After Effects will save the project automatically every few minutes. Alright, and now, it's time to import our logo into the project. We can do this in two ways: either locate the logo on the computer, and drag the AI logo file manually into the project panel like that. Another way to do it is by double-clicking on the empty area in the project panel. After that, we just need to find the folder we made for the course. Next, locate the AI folder, and select the first logo. Finally, make sure not to click on this function, and then click on Import. And now, a small window has popped up asking us how we want to import this file. In composition or footage form. Let's see what the differences are between these two. For now, please don't do it with me at this moment. I want to first explain to you the differences between these two options. Don't worry, we will do it all together shortly. So first, let's see which options are available to us when we choose to import it as a footage. I'll choose the Merge Layers option, and click OK to see what it does. So now, we can see the logo in the project panel as one layer. And if we drag this logo to our composition, we'll see it as a single layer with all its sublayers stuck together, which will make it not possible to animate the logo and all the layers from which is made. To undo my action, I'll press Ctrl-Z a few times. And now, I'll import the file again. This time, I'll click on Choose Layer. From here, I can select a specific layer from the Illustrator file. All the names we see here are the layers' names in the original Illustrator file. But in our case, I won't use this option, because I don't need to choose a specific layer. In our case, I want to bring in all the layers when they are divided into separate layers. And for this, I need to select Composition here. In other words, After Effects will import this file as separate layers into a separate composition. There are two options in this process as well. Let's start by understanding what it means to import the layers as document size. So I'll click OK, and as you can see, a new composition will be created, and a new folder will appear, with all the Illustrator file layers. And now, when I enter the logo composition, I'll see that the logo is split into layers, exactly as in the Illustrator file. The background, triangle, and letters are all different layers. Now, let's understand what it means for us when we choose document size. To help you understand this better, I will temporarily hide the background layer and the transparent background. I will select the triangle layer and hide the other layers as well. Now, pay attention to the boundaries of this layer. Even though the object on this layer is quite small, the proportion or the size of this layer is large. In fact, they are the size of the original Illustrator document, in other words, the document size. The same is true for this layer. The boundaries of this layer are larger despite the smaller letter. Working with document-sized layers is not so comfortable, because it will make it hard to animate the layers later on. Now let's move on to the second option for importing the file as composition, and see if it will be a better option for us. But before that, I will delete the folder and composition that were created earlier. I'll select them and press the backspace key, and click Delete. And now, I want you to do it with me. So, to bring the logo design into our project, let's click here twice, select the first logo file, ensure it's not highlighted, and click Import. Now, select Composition, and this time, let's choose Layer Size together, and click OK. And once again, a folder is created with all the logo layers and a new composition. Let's click on it twice to enter it. Here, we see the design of the logo again, just like before. But this time, if we select the triangle layer, we'll see that the boundaries of this layer are adjusted to the size of the object on this layer. The same goes for the letter A. It'll be way easier for us to animate these layers now when their size matches the object's size. Okay, now let's go back to our main composition from here, and continue our lesson on creating our first logo animation. Alright, so this logo animation is made up of 5 animated parts or scenes. The first part is the animation of the character silhouette inside the triangle. The second is the animation of the letter inside the triangle. The third one is the connection and transition between these two animations. The fourth part is the animation of the letters. And lastly, in the fifth part, we will create the outro animation. Alright, first things first, let's work on the animation of the silhouette within the triangle, and we'll cover it in the next part of this lesson. It's going to be awesome, so see you there.